The Invite is the latest from director Olivia Wilde, a single-location dramedy following a house party with two couples. One of these couples is presented as being mundane with a rocky marriage, while the other is peculiar, enigmatic, and non-traditional. We're only 6 months into the year, so the upper echelons of this year's cinematic offerings are still to be released. That being said, so far, this is my favourite screenplay of the year. I'm a sucker for a well-paced single-location narrative. What else can I say? There's an intimacy to this sort of narrative, which scribes Rashida Jones and Will McCormack used to its fullest extent. The four central characters, Pina, Hawk, Angela, and Joe, are placed within the confines of a single apartment, their conflicting ideologies and personalities forced into close proximity of one another. The characters themselves are so fully realised, with their own distinct comedic tones actively there on the page, which makes the intertwining dynamics a blast to watch. More on each of the characters later on. The specific kind of comedy in this film isn't necessarily from the jokes. There are one-liners and some jokes, but some of the funniest moments for me were the subtler lines which kind of blend into the background when people are bickering with one another. I can't tell how many of these are improvised. More than likely a few, but they gel into the script in such a manner that they feel like inherent parts of it, so I'll mention them here. There's also the presence of a deeper melancholy, especially with Angela and Joe, which I think is what made this one particularly enjoyable for me. The tonal juggle that goes on here, fundamentally coming from that script, is what keeps this entire thing afloat. Nay, flying. Then there's the combination of direction, cinematography, and editing. I didn't know while watching this, but the cinematographer for this film, Adam Newport-Bearer, has created a niche for himself these past 364 days. He's been shooting the best-looking comedies of 2025 and 26, like Splitsville. The film was edited by Yorgos Mavropsaradis, Yorgos Lanthimos' editor from the very beginning, my best friend. What I'm trying to get at is the fact that Wilde, with her direction and selection of crew as director, picked an assortment of some of the best people who make modern comedies. I wouldn't have been none the wiser if I hadn't had to look them up because, especially for a single location film, the pacing of the camera, performances, and the edit needs to be in sync. The Invite is immaculately paced. The dryness of Mavropsaradis' editing comes through here, the cutting being rather blunt in its portrayal of the rapidly escalating shenanigans going on with the four characters. The cinematography uses lighting and reflections, bringing the location into the character's spatial geography for the effect of making that one apartment more of an active participant in the narrative. The set is moulded to reflect the verbal and emotional separations between the characters, the pigeonholing of them illuminative of their deeply rooted isolation. There was a trailer for a lowbrow looking comedy right before watching this film, which only made me appreciate all the pieces of the Invite's visual presentation even more. This, shot on film, is the type of film I need to see more of. Before I get to the performances, because I'm going to assume that that's what most people are interested in, I need to talk about the score. The score, like the cinematography and editing, helps move the film along at a pace which seems incongruent to the basic layout of the story, merely taking place in one apartment. Devonte Hines' score is huge, and it's oppressive. It brings together string instruments, which ties into Joe's characterization as a failed musician turned music teacher at a conservatory, in an imposing manner. It imbues the film with a level of deep, foreboding tension. The presentation of the film is mimicked by this approach to the musical composition. The film may be a comedy, one of the funniest in recent memory. I don't laugh much in movie theatres, but this did get me properly chuckling throughout. But all the facets of the behind-the-scenes work place the story within a format which seems to be sort of detached from genre conventions. And now we get to the performances, all of which are excellent and finely tuned to this film's rhythm. Let's start with Seth Rogen and Olivia Wilde as Joe and Angela. These two characters are the central dynamic drive of the film, as it is their dysfunctional marriage which is placed under a microscope in The Invite. They're bitter and sarcastic, verbally biting at each other. It's their groaning and grumbling, which has both a comedic and dramatic weight to sustain the film. Rogen especially is the most relatable I think he's ever been, with his sour mood and self-loathing, which is reflected in his dismissive tone throughout the bulk of the narrative. Wilde, placed oppositional to this performance, is also hectic as this woman, trying to keep things together, if only for a night. Her slipping competency has the same general effect as Rogen's performance, being both funny in the moment, but also deeply sad the more the narrative unfurls. Then comes the enigmatic couple, who have a little bit more under the surface. It's Penelope Cruz and Edward Norton's implementation in this film which sparks the significant majority of the conflict. The first few minutes of just Wilde and Rogen are great, but Cruz and Norton are the necessary ingredient in pulling the most out of this concept. It's the little details of their performances. The brief shots of facial expressions, like Norton's smug grin in Cruz's eyes, are incredible. It's all in the finer details of their performances especially. It's the editing again, but used to bring the smallest elements of performance to the forefront. Moreover, Norton as this charismatic nice guy with snippets of dialogue which is tonally antithetical to, say, Rogen's paranoia, is what I found to be the funniest part of this film. It's the best. It feels great to finally watch a new film in cinemas post-hiatus, which surpasses my hype. This, by all metrics, is the type of film that I could watch endlessly, and I'm so glad that this film as it currently stands, exists. It's riotously funny, it gets more dour, the yin-yang dynamic of these two tonal poles amplifying the other in a complementary partnership. This is a new personal favourite of mine. Might even be the year's best so far. The Invite. 5 stars. And now it's time for spoilers. This isn't a substitute for watching the film, so I suggest watching it first, before continuing. It's hard to pick out a stand-up performance because everyone is operating at their pinnacle, but I might have to say that it's Edward Norton. To be exact, the sudden tonal shift in the third act, when Joe ridicules Hawk's nickname. Up until this moment, Hawk has been more or less fun and games, going with the flow and being a genuinely agreeable, if not slightly weird guy. But it's the abrupt jump from that persona to his own deeper melancholy regarding his dead wife that makes his character more interesting. It's only one monologue which Norton delivers with acute precision, but there's so much to flesh out Hawk's character. The jokes are put aside, and the film then shifts its gears for the rest of the runtime to focus more on the floorwork of its characters than the overt comedy. I already got behind this decision, as I think it has the ability to recontextualize the humour of the rest of the film without souring it. It just makes the characters themselves more interesting in retrospect, and seeing them utilize humour as a defense mechanism of sorts. I thought this was best encapsulated by that Edward Norton monologue. I also really dug the interweaving of the music as a motif for Joe's own depression. His aspirations are weaponized by that foreboding score, but his background as a musician is present in the diegesis too. The culmination of this is then the final scene where, after adamantly refusing to expose his musical past, he quietly plays the piano once the party ceases and his relationship with Angela is at its most frayed. Him playing the piano, Angela joining him and having that be the final image of the film, I thought brought a level of emotional closure to the film which I wasn't expecting going in. It rhymes with the film's opening, set at their wedding. It's a somber, quiet moment which further cements this film as having masterful control over its tone. It understands how to bring closure to the thematic layer set up by Jones and McCormack, and the performances are intimate, inviting the audience into this emotionally vulnerable moment. The music lands this film. The steady deterioration of Pina and Hawk's relationship is also an interesting parallel to Joe and Angela's, I thought. All of what I've been talking about in this spoiler section has been in the third act, and I love this third act. The communication barrier between Pina and Hawk, which unless the audience is Spanish speaking, they won't exactly be aware of until it's revealed towards the end, makes them, in hindsight, more like Joe and Angela than meets the eye upon their introduction. It really goes to show that all these characters are, in fact, deeply broken inside, while projecting particularly crafted versions of themselves. All this, and I haven't brought up the fact that this is a sex comedy about orchestrating a party, to phrase it elegantly. This particular plot thread emerges at around the midpoint. The awkwardness of the encounters, nothing explicit, it reaches points where it's about to delve into such forays, but swerves just beforehand, is another source of what was funny. Wilde and Rogen's mundanity in conjunction with Norton and Cruise's cool makes the build-up scenes funny, especially when viewing with an audience who's also laughing along. So yeah, The Invite might just be a new staple within the lineup of my favourite comedy films, which I was not expecting at all. I thought I would like the film, but I wasn't quite expecting for me to love it as much as I ended up doing. This is the type of film to go about bringing friends to. I need more films like this. Well, that's all. Keep on watching movies, and form your own opinions. See you in the next one.